All right, welcome everybody. Um, it is Halloween. We made it, made it to Halloween. So anyway, what happens as I'm looking at Holly McCall and Chip Saltzman, who are my guests today. We usually talk for a couple minutes as we let everybody in. So happy Halloween to both of you.
Happy Halloween.
Or either one of you dressing up?
I am.
And what are you going as tonight?
So I don't have very many options here, but since I put makeup on today, I think I'm going to put on my tomato suit, which I got from the East Nashville Tomato Fest several years ago, and I'm going to walk up and down Franklin's Main Street.
All right, very good. And Chip, what are you doing?
So I've got a new baby at home who's 3 months old. So of course she will be going as Baby Yoda from the new Star Wars Mandalorian. I will be going as what most people consider me anyway as Darth Vader.
Yeah, I got it.
And my wife will be Rey from the new. So we're going to cover all the Mandalorian, old Star Wars, and new Star Wars all at once tonight.
Very good. And do you have an outfit, or you just walk around and people?
I just walk around. Everybody knows me.
Yeah, okay, I got it. All right.
Vice Mayor, what are you wearing?
I have a granddaughter who is 7 months old, and
I
can't remember what they told me she was coming as tonight, but I'm going to go there, and I think I'm just going to go as the vice mayor, which is very scary these days. I guess I could dress up as the mayor, and that would be very scary too. I don't know what he's doing. All I know is that I hope I get some trick-or-treaters. I've got lots of candy, and I am going to try to separately bag it. Oh, my daughter just chimed in and said she's going as a unicorn, so she's on watching. So my granddaughter will be going as a unicorn. Right.
Well, I know where you live, Jim, and I'm happy to come by and take some candy off your hands.
Okay, yeah. So I live over in Green Hills. I'll send you the address. It's Foxhall Close. Many people can look it up. So just come on over. So let me ask you one more question before we actually get fully into this. Do you all get a lot of trick-or-treaters where you live?
I get zero. I have no sidewalk.
You get zero?
Nobody comes to see me.
Chip, anybody?
Yeah, we're in Westmead. No sidewalks as well. I wish I knew somebody to talk to about that. And we get very little trick-or-treaters.
You know, I used to live over on Hampton Avenue, and we would get a lot, and I loved that. And we've moved since then. But at some point, at least in our area, it became Whitland and Richland and Central. And I think Richland gets like thousands. And so everybody goes over there because the houses are, there's sidewalks and they're very close. I'm not sure how many people will be out tonight, but anyway, we'll see.
Nickel Lane shuts theirs off as well, and they have it blocked, and they have thousands of kids, and all the homes are open. And I don't know if they're doing that tonight or not, but I've been there where there's been 3,000 or 4,000 kids going up and down that street.
Isn't that amazing?
I bet that's some high-end candy in Whitland too.
Well, all I know is that I'm gonna go get some more candy today, and just for me.
So
anyway.
More question, Jim. What are you giving out tonight? What type of candy do you give out?
So I got a big giant bag of just an array of like good stuff, like Almond Joys and Reese's and Snickers and things like that. And I don't give out just one piece. I usually give out a handful. So you come to my house, you get taken care of.
You.
Yeah.
Definitely send that address around.
I will. They'll probably post it in just a minute. All right. Well, we are ready to go. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for the fun. I will tell you, I volunteered the other night at Boo at the Zoo, and it was so I just got a text message or a chat. Something. Well, I guess it came through text. So Rhonda Switzer, who is the head of Interfaith Dental, gives out toothbrushes. So I wouldn't go out to her house. Yeah, I mean, he wants the point.
Weak sauce.
Maybe the day after Halloween you can get toothbrushes. I don't know. But I went to Boo at the Zoo last Saturday, and everybody was dressed up. They only had half the crowd. It was sold out, but it was half the crowd. And it was really fun to be around lots of little kids who were having fun, and the parents were dressed up. People were wearing masks and social distancing. It was one of the it was one of the few events that I've been to over the last couple of months that where people were smiling and having fun. So having said that, let's talk about elections.
Yeah.
So my guests today are Holly McCall, who's the editor-in-chief of the Tennessee Lookout, and I've got Chip Saltzman, who is the president of S&S Strategies. I've known both of you for a long, long time. Thank you both for being on. We're, 3 days before the election? It's Tuesday, in case nobody knew. Let me tell you a couple things first. I've got Councilmember John Rutherford on, and I think Councilmember Tanya Hancock is on. Jason Mumpower from the Comptroller's Office is on. Bill Young, formerly with the Attorney General's Office and now with, I think, the Registry of Election Finance is on. And we may have some other people on as well. I'll check my list. A couple things on COVID. Let's see. We have 238 additional cases as of today. That makes our number about 34,900. And we've had 4 additional deaths today. They were all, they all had underlying health conditions, but 4 additional deaths, 309 deaths overall. And we're still, obviously, every week we look at these things, and we're still dealing with this, and we are. Numbers are going up, so everybody be very, very careful. Paul Summers is on, General Summers. Thank you for being a part of this. I usually get a question from the comptroller himself, who wants to know why he is the best looking person we've ever had basically on this show. And there is no answer for that, so I'm not even going to ask you that. All right, so first, take a couple minutes. Tell me a little bit about yourself to the viewing audience, and maybe end by explaining how you got into this role. So Holly, I'll start with you. Just a little bit about yourself, and why are you sitting in front of me getting ready to talk about the election?
Well, so I am editor-in-chief of the Tennessee Lookout. We have been around for about 6 months. We are a nonpartisan policy and politics publication. It is all policy, all politics, all the time. This role came to me last January, and my background it's kind of a mixed bag. I feel like I'm very fortunate. I love politics and I love journalism, and I've had the great opportunity to somehow be able to flip back and forth between the two. I've worked as a reporter in Ohio, Missouri, and Tennessee, and I've worked on several political campaigns on the Democratic side. But here I am, and I've got a great crew at the Tennessee Lookout. Just want to give a shout out to my reporters, Anita Wadwani, who many of you all know, Nate Rao, and Dulce Torres Guzman, and we're fired up, and we've got our plan for Election Day.
All right, good. And I will tell you that I believe that Justin Wilson, the comptroller, is on the call. All right. So Chip, I'll come to you, and then you can answer the question to Justin if you want to about why he's better looking than anybody else.
I mean, facts are just facts. I mean, Justin is probably the best looking Republican comptroller we've ever had in Tennessee in the last 100 years. I don't think anybody would dispute that. I've got a blanket right over here that Justin gave me on for my wedding. So I'm going to say nothing but good things about my favorite current comptroller in the state of Tennessee. I think of all the comptrollers Tennessee has right now, he's by far the best. There's no
I understand. Very good answer.
So, Mr. Vice Mayor, it's good to be with you. Miss Holly, thank you for sharing I thought there was going to be tea. You had mentioned tea earlier. I'm drinking coffee. I thought you were going to send some tea around. So,
we'll pour some tea, Chip.
Okay, thank you. I look forward to that. But as the mayor said, Vice Mayor said, Chip Saltzman, I'm actually born and bred in Nashville. There's not many of us left. I grew up about a mile from where I live right now in Westmead. I went to St. Henry grade school and Father Ryan High School. I've been involved in politics since graduating college. I think most of the folks know me or dislike me from my time on Fox News, my time for managing Governor Mike Huckabee's presidential campaign in 2008. Been involved in presidential politics for the last 20 years. Also, pretty much anytime there's a primary in Tennessee, I try to get in a fight. I'm one of those people that like fighting primaries. I think they're fun. I think they're important. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, I tell people all the time, get involved in your primary because that's the direction you want to go as a party. And that's where the real fights are for kind of the direction you want to go. And so, Mr. Vice Mayor, you're right. We've known each other a long time. We've started out on opposite sides of the equation. When he was in the speaker's office, I was in the governor's office. We fought like cats and dogs, but we only did so from 9 to 5. I bought a lot of ice cream from him when he owned Maggie Moo's. And I don't know if this will hurt you or not, but I actually voted for you for vice mayor. So we've come full circle, but
Oh, wow.
your opponents might set against you.
Thank you. No, we are friends, and I'm friends with Holly too. And no, I so much appreciate you both being on the show, and I respect both of you. And so let's get into it. Let's talk about what's getting ready to happen. So tell me, maybe tell the folks specifically, what have you all been doing for the last couple of weeks? I know, Holly, now you're in journalism, but Chip, I'll start with you.
Yep.
What primarily have you been working on the last couple of weeks?
So there's two things. Like Tennessee stuff, I've been working with the Speaker of the House, Cameron Sexton. We've done a statewide Road to Victory bus tour, 35 counties, 38 stops over 8 days to get the vote everywhere from, we did a stop here in Davidson County at the Bellevue Library, but we've also been in Northeast Tennessee all the way to West Tennessee, as we like to say, Mountain City to Memphis. We've covered that with state legislative, state Senate candidates, congressional candidates, everybody on there. And then I've also been traveling with the vice president for the last couple of weeks. Been to North Carolina, South Carolina with them last week, was with them at the debate in Utah. And so on the national side, working a lot with him, and then on the Tennessee side with the speaker.
Okay. All right. And Holly, you've been in the office, or you've been doing some other stuff as well?
No, we've been pretty busy too. One of the things that we really wanted to do when we launched 6 months ago in an election year was to make sure that we covered state, House, and Senate races. They typically just don't get enough coverage. And that's one of the things that I personally have wanted to see out of local media over the last few years. So we've had our regular staff, and we've had several great freelancers, second generation. Rob Doby, Bruce Doby's son, has been working with us covering legislative races because we think it's important for people to know not just the presidential. Everybody's very fired up about the presidential race. They get intense about that. But these state house races are what typically affect us locally more. So yeah, we've been doing a lot of spotlights and profiles, particularly on the competitive races. There are several in Memphis that look competitive. There are a couple in Murfreesboro that are competitive, and then Knoxville's got a couple of hot races. So we've been doing that, and then planning how we spread ourselves out for election week.
I got it. All right. So one of the questions that came in over the week that you both know that came in was the question about polling. All right. So Holly, you were just talking about several key competitive races in the state house and maybe in the Senate, and I mean you can kind of get a sense of where those competitive races are nationally. You look back 4 years ago. You're going into this last weekend. I mean, the polling seemed to indicate that Clinton would win. She didn't. Trump won. If people want to know about polling, tell me what you know about it. What has happened since 4 years ago? And you can talk about both, state and national. Polling is better. Polling is the same. I mean, so, you look at the polls now and you go, okay, I think I sort of know where everything is, but you don't know because people weren't sure. Holly, I'll start with you. What can you tell us about the polling now?
Yeah, I mean, I would start out like 4 years ago. I think it was just the last 4 days or so. Nate Silver is one of the standards with 538 that people always talk about, or they used to do. And I remember the last 4 days of the election 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton's number started to precipitously drop. The Comey email had come out. In a chaotic move that I will never repeat, I myself ran for office. And so I was out knocking on doors, and I was hearing anecdotally from people. My husband is an optimist, and he was like, I think Hillary's really going to have a big win. And I was like, I don't know. I'm not hearing that on the streets. I think this year, pollsters have gone to great lengths to try to overcorrect. They got such a black eye 4 years ago. In fact, they were not off that far in vote numbers in the count. But I think they've gone pretty far to try to overcorrect and make sure they call it oversampling in certain populations. I believe I'm sorry, I've got to wipe my nose. Allergies are killing me, you guys, but oversampling in certain populations, which means instead of, if you're trying to gauge what white men, for instance, are thinking, instead of trying to get the split between white men, white women, black men, black women, they're oversampling white men to make sure they're appropriately gauging what's going on with them. I'll kick it to Chip.
Yeah, so, well, so I'll follow up with you, Holly. Do you think the polling now is, I mean, just based upon what you've got, you think it's, because they're oversampling, you think it's more accurate this time?
So it seems to be a little more accurate, and I'll tell you why. And this is actually a lesson I learned in the 2015 mayoral election. In 2015, Megan Barry, who became mayor, was releasing polls, and her polls were consistently said about the same thing. And other campaigns were saying, well, these are internal polls, it's not accurate. But other polls were starting to come out that showed she was ahead. And I'm a slow person. I'm not stupid, but I am a little slow. And so it took me that race to realize if all the polls are saying pretty much the same thing, there's probably some level of accuracy, particularly in a presidential race where you're seeing Republican and Democrat leaning firms coming out with similar numbers.
Right. Chip?
Yeah,
so,
yeah, I've got a lot of polls on my desk right now that I've kind of gone through to see where we are in the last week and kind of making those final decisions that we made yesterday. And Holly's got a lot of this right, and polls are challenging right now. But I think our biggest challenge this cycle is, I do think the pollsters have worked really hard. I think they are oversampling. I just think the turnout model's wrong. And I think I've won races on knowing that the turnout model was different than what the other pollsters were saying, whether it was turnout in different counties or based on local elections, which Jim, I know you do a lot of. But here's the deal. Oh my God, did I just quote Joe Biden? Here's the deal. See, you hear it enough, you just come out. There's counties in Texas that have voted 96% of the total vote from 2016, and we're not election day yet. There's counties all over the country that have voted 78, 90%. There's some that have already overvoted what 2016 was. All these pollsters, when they started, and as they move forward, they're trying to catch up with that. And I think that's a lagging indicator. I think what we saw in 16 is what Holly says, right? All the polls kind of were tied, and then you felt this surge forward for Trump at the end. You always feel something like that in the last weekend. I think that's a bigger challenge for Trump as we go into this last weekend. Yes, the polls are tightening. You see Arizona looks like a jump ball. It wasn't 3 weeks ago. I think North Carolina looks a lot better. It wasn't 3 weeks ago. I think Florida's fine. I think Georgia's fine. Texas is fine. The problem is he spent the last month fighting on our ground. And it all is going to end up in Pennsylvania. I know you're going to talk about that a little later, but the polling question is, I don't think it's right. I think the turnout model's wrong. I think it's an historic election, and kudos for Republicans and Democrats. I always used to say, I think we win if everybody votes, and we being the country. So if we had 100% voting turnout, that would be a win.
Well, so tell me, when you talk about the turnout model, I think I know what you're talking about, but what does that mean? And then relate it back to the polls. I see what the polls are saying, but are they thinking that, I know a lot of people have early voted.
Yep.
I early voted which is, I usually vote on election day. I early voted this time. What's the turnout model? What does that mean?
Yeah. So the turnout model is you look at history and say, this is what I think, these are the people I think are going to vote in what percentages, a little bit what Holly said. For instance, I think it's going to be 52% female, 48% male. I think it's going to be 48% over 50 vote. I think it's going to be 7%, 18 to 25, 25 to 36. I think it's going to be 14%. So you base out your polling on who you think is going to come, and then you kind of go from there. So what do they think the national African American vote is going to be? That's what their polls have to reflect. So if they think it's going to be a 15% African American turnout, then they have to make sure their polls show a 15% African American turnout. I think all that's going to be blown up because you can't tell me with a straight face. We know that there's there's huge turnout in Republican and Democrat bases. We see it in counties in Nashville, big Democrat turnout. In the counties, big Republican turnout. But there's also this big number in the middle, and some of it as high as 30%. 30%, we don't know who you are. The other, right? Now we tried to model those. We've tried to get in kind of in depth on who they are. There's some races that it shows to be about 55-40% Trump. There's some that are showing it to 55-40% Trump, Biden. So I think that these people that have never voted. I met an 84-year-old woman in Northeast Tennessee that the party chairman introduced me to that had never voted before in her life. 84 years old. And she came out to vote. Now, I don't know what she'd been doing the previous 84 years, but this election was important enough to do that. I think the last time we saw something like that was 2008 with Obama. There were people that had voted for the first time for an historic election for Barack Obama. Like I said, I think when we all vote, I think we win.
All right, so let me ask you a follow-up question on that, and then I'll go to Holly with the same question. Pandemic. We're in the middle of somewhere where we've got this.
Somewhere down the line, we're in this pandemic, yeah.
Somewhere in here, we've got a pandemic going on. People are nervous about that. Obviously, there was lots of questions about mail-in balloting, which we can also talk about, and absentee ballots. How does that factor into the polling? Because I can't tell whether people went early voted because they just wanted to do it and get it over with, so they didn't run into what they might be concerned about, long lines on election day. And so then the long line showed up early voting.
Yeah.
How does that factor into to the discussions?
So we've looked at this from legislative races in Tennessee to congressionals in other parts of the country. What we've seen is traditional Democrats that shifted from early voting to mail-in ballots. So there was as you all know, a huge surge in absentee ballots and requests. And what we found out is there wasn't a net huge gain in new voters doing that. The new voters have come early, but the Democrats have shifted to absentee ballot. And then you got your early voters. Jim, you've been traditionally a day best. So we poll you now. Mm-hmm. If you voted, who did you vote for? Democrats are overwhelmingly answering that they want the absentee ballot. They're winning the absentee ballot race hands down. And it's a closer race in early voting with the Democrat. Of course, I'm using Tennessee. I'm more familiar with those numbers than anywhere else.
That's fine.
Tennessee is winning the early voting on the Republican side, and then election day traditionally is Republican territory. Mm-hmm. So I think what this means long term is you could turn on your television at 7:00, and Donald Trump may be winning every one of these states that are in play, because they're gonna announce the early votes first. Shelby County, Davidson County does it first. They announce the early vote, and then they announce the election day votings, and absentee ballots are last. So I think what's going to be a challenge for us as we go through this, and I hope they are ready for this. Could you imagine the country, first of all, Trump on election day at 9:00 looks like he's going to win, and then we start counting all the absentee ballots, and every single day the race gets shorter, closer and closer and closer. It literally will be like everybody will just be getting antsed up every day we do that. So I hope we're prepared for that.
All right. So Holly, what do you think about the COVID stuff and what Chip just said?
So Chip probably gets to see a lot of cool data that I don't get to see, and I'm very envious of that. But I do think he's nailed it. There was the Democratic Party has put a huge emphasis on mail-in voting this year. And I think just about every state. Wisconsin has, Tennessee certainly has. I know there are a number of people in the Democratic Party who put pressure on the Secretary of State. There have been lawsuits about mail-in balloting. And then just in the last month or 6 weeks even, I've seen a little bit of a shift. People are starting to get nervous about the mail-in balloting. Some of that's because of the political rhetoric out there, like, we're not going to count ballots that are received after this, and then rules have changed. Now you can drop off a ballot at the post office by 3 p.m. on election day. And so there's been more of a move to early vote, than there was originally. And I know some people have gotten very nervous about that. I got to tell you, Chip said, people are going to get antsed up every day. It's hard to imagine that people can get more antsy than they are now. But I think I don't think that we are going to know the outcome at midnight on election night of the presidential race, and I don't know how long it's going to take to get it all sorted out.
I mean, Tennessee is one of the best states for absentee ballots because you fill out
Hold on. Somebody's phone is unmuted. So if you don't mind
oh.
muting, because we're hearing somebody else. Okay, go ahead, Holly.
Okay, I think I lost my train of thought, but at any rate, I think Chip is right. He is right about Election Day traditionally being Republican. I think 4 years ago, that's where Trump came in very strongly. I don't see why that would be any different this year. I would think older people would want to go out and either early vote or absentee ballot. But again, like the pandemic has become politicized, where Democrats think it's a serious thing and less so on the Republican side, which is not to say that not every Republican takes it seriously, but I think there's some rhetoric from the right that we don't need masks and, this is not, it's the flu. And so I don't know. I think it's up in the air.
Okay, so
the scientific response, Holly, that is nailed on. I think it's up in the air. Absolutely right.
Okay, all right. So let me ask you a question about one of the things that I look for, and Chip mentioned it before, going into the last weekend. You're looking for momentum of your candidate, okay? And so talk about, from a national perspective, I guess, momentum. What do you see? I mean, most of the polls indicate that Biden is leading. I've seen in the news where it looks like Trump is tightening. What do you see as the momentum? I mean, where is it right now in your perspective? I'll start with Holly and then go to Chip.
So I think it looks to me like the momentum is with Biden. It will tighten up, but Trump's had a series of unfortunate events that's getting a lot of airplay. There was even though he'd already left, there was the incident in Omaha where people, couldn't get to the buses and they were left out in the cold and 30 people went to the hospital. There's that. I was watching last night, there's, stuff going on in Pennsylvania where the district attorney from Philadelphia, it was one of the stranger things I've heard in my life. I never thought I would hear a district attorney say, Mr. President, if you send people here, I have a jail cell waiting for you. So there's certainly, I'd say, more negative publicity for Donald Trump than I've ever seen with another president. It's not just media, it's law enforcement officials. But I think it remains to be seen, like Joe Biden is clearly appealing to people's sense of decency. It's not a hard sell on policy. It's more of a sense of decency. And I think it remains to be seen how that plays out on Election Day, but he's got the momentum now.
Okay, Chip?
Well, I think 2020 in the campaign world is going to be like everything else. It's going to be an incredible case study after we get a few years behind us on this, and not just for the pandemic, but for the campaigns. And the reason I say that is because, like I said, 4 years ago, you had this sense that the race tightened and you had this surge at the end for Donald Trump. I'm not necessarily feeling the surge, and Holly's right that this week we had a great GDP number on Thursday that you would think would be a really big economic success, but the stock market didn't react so well on Friday. So you go into the weekend from the economic message, and it's not exactly what you'd hoped it'd be going into the last election. But at the wild card is this: when we're watching our television sets and take out the 80 or so people that are watching this, most people kind of watch the news. They just it's on, they see things, but they're not listening, really paying attention. You see these big crowds for Trump, a lot of enthusiasm for Trump, and then you go to Biden and there's 200 people socially distanced, and that's what they've decided to do, and you respect that. Does that factor into anybody's decision because they say, oh my gosh, 5,000 people came out to see Donald Trump and 250 people came out to see Joe Biden? I think some of that does work. I've had that conversation probably 50 times in the last couple of weeks. Do these rallies mean anything? Do these events that show a lot of enthusiasm? Historically, they do. I remember being in with Governor Bush at the last stop the day before the election in Tennessee, and we had 15,000 people in Chattanooga. And that was a huge deal. But now we're not doing that as much. So I think it's up in the air. I mean, Holly got it right too. I mean, there's so much we don't know. Typically, someone like Holly and I would come in the Saturday before the election and we would tell you exactly what was going to happen. And we would always be right. I'm not sure that there's going to be a whole lot of people on Tuesday that said, yeah, I called that. Yeah, I got that right. I just think there's so much up in the air with the turnout, with how we're going to do this, how we're going to go through election night, what we're going to see on election night versus what's out there. I just don't know how many votes are going to be counted Tuesday at midnight.
Okay. And maybe that gets into my next question. Holly, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to add something. Democrats have something akin to PTSD from 2016. Like that is actually a term I hear people use. But one thing to keep in mind, is Joe Biden the most exciting and energetic candidate the Democratic Party has ever had? I think like there's not even a Democrat who can say, yes, Joe Biden is the most exciting candidate we've ever had. But Hillary Clinton had almost historic disapproval and negative ratings, which Democrats grossly underestimated in 2016. And Biden has much more higher favorability ratings than she did. So whether that plays, it's got to play in some way, but again, we just don't know. And Chip's right. Anybody who makes a prediction this year is an idiot.
Although I did have Murder Hornet for the win, just FYI.
I'm sure we will make predictions.
I'm going to ask for predictions in a minute, so there you go. Chip, let me come back to you. So typically, I'll tell you the way I typically figure out who's going to win the presidency. This is my non-political strategy, or just the way I look at it, is that typically I would go, okay, I would watch the debates. Which one of the candidates would you feel comfortable sitting down having a beer with, or a drink, or just sitting down at a table and talking? And then the second part is who's got the momentum going into the last weekend when it's close. I mean, obviously we've had presidential elections where it hadn't been close. On this one, and I won't tell you, my ideas on it, but I will tell you that, well, this is the question. The question is, what if there just is no momentum either way going into the last weekend? What if people are so tired of all of it? And they may be. I mean, that's why I wasn't sure whether that had something to do with early voting. But what if, sort of like the pandemic, which is one of the things that we worry about, is that people they're just tired. They're tired of being inside. They're tired of the news. They're tired of seeing the spikes up and down. And maybe they're just tired. And so it is what it is. There is no momentum going in either way. I mean, it is what it is. And then we vote and then it's over. Do you get the sense that people are just tired and they just want it to be over with?
You want me to go on that one first?
Yeah, you can go on to that one first.
So I'm the absolute worst person to ask that question to, because I'm in it every day. I'm exhausted. I am tired. I am ready for election night, kind of being a campaign operative. If I have one more phone call from a congressman about a TV ad, I'm going to pull my hair out. But it is, I think there's something there, Jim. And you talk about the debates itself, typically the incumbent president has a bad first debate, and Trump jumped over that bar with gusto. And then you come back in the second debate and you kind of right that ship, and the incumbent usually has a second debate, kind of rights the ship. Then you have this like rubber match in the third debate, and then that's the decider, right? Well, we didn't have that this year, just like everything else. It's kind of weird. I think that the momentum question, both sides, far left, the far right, they are fired up. You see on the Trump side, you see the boat rallies and the rallies and the drives and all that kind of stuff. On the Democrat side, they're doing a great job with the early voting and the absentee ballots, and they're really focused in some of the urban cores. They're doing a great job on that. I think there's some truth. I think some of the people in the middle are just, let's vote and be done, and let's put 2020 in the books. Looking for a great New Year's Eve party this year, and start again in January.
So, Chip, I'll get to you in a second on the same question, but my idea, and I've told the mayor this, is that we should rent a giant shredding machine, put it in the middle of the public square downtown. And I said we probably should do it now, or do it sometime in November, and have everybody bring their 2020 calendars, and we'll shred it.
Yeah.
Don't wait until New Year's Eve. Let's just get rid of this year now.
Do it now.
Get rid of it now.
Yeah.
Holly, same question in terms of just momentum. Is it just, it's just, nobody has any momentum. They're just tired.
First, I'd really like to have been a fly on the wall to see that conversation with you and Mayor Cooper, because I know him pretty well, and I can just see him adjusting his glasses. And but anyway,
I don't think he wrote that one down, that suggestion.
Okay, Jim. Anyway, yes. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have the level of momentum that even in 2016 that we saw, where Trump clearly had a surge and Clinton like fell off a cliff the last few days. It is more of a creep towards the finish line. There is not a surge for either one of them. There's not big momentum. But I do think people being tired, that is belied by the historic early voting numbers. People are not tired enough to not get out and vote in huge numbers. Are they sick of 2020? Yes. Are they sick of the pandemic and politics in general? Yes. But I think that they're clearly still getting out and voting. And I'm seeing on the Democrat, I will say this, the Republicans in Tennessee have done a phenomenal job over the last 20 years of organizing, recruiting candidates, campaigning, fundraising. I'm seeing a little bit more energetic activity from Democrats in Tennessee than I've seen in maybe ever. I mean, for years, the Democrats didn't have to do that because they had a majority since Reconstruction and they lost the majority. I think it was 10 years ago, Chip, 10 or 12 years ago. But I'm seeing sort of more efficiency than I've seen ever. There are a couple of congressional candidates that have organized their own coordinated campaigns in District 2. Renee Hoyos, who's running against Congressman Tim Burchett, has coordinated with all the state and House campaigns in her district. She's raised $722,000, I think, maybe even more than that now in District 7, which is, that's a historically terrible seat for Democrats. But Kieran Sripada, the Democrat there, has also organized a coordinated campaign. So there's no big momentum for the presidential candidates, but I don't think we're going to see any sea change in Tennessee Democrats or Tennessee politics, but Tennessee Democrats seem to be doing a little bit of a better job this time.
All right. So tell me, the next question kind of follows up on the momentum, because you're talking about a lot of people early voting. As we go into Election Day, and as we all sit around the television and flip stations looking for who's got the latest coverage and the most information coming in, what are the things, maybe both on a national and a state level, that you're going to be looking for, or that we should be looking for? Holly, if I was sitting in your living room watching it with you, Chip, if I was sitting in your living room watching it with you, what are you all going to be looking for as keys, so that you can kind of see? And it may be that, like Chip said, we may not know, but if you're looking for something, or if you're looking for a couple things, couple factors on Tuesday night, what are you looking for to try to see how you think things are going to go?
Well, I'm going to go.
Oh, go ahead, Holly.
I'll let Holly go first, and I'll go to you, Chip.
One of the things I'm really going to be looking at is Black voter turnout. There's been a lot of voter registration efforts this time. And I think in Tennessee, for instance, we've got a Black Senate candidate who I would not be shocked to see Marquita Bradshaw perform as well as Phil Bredesen did in 2018, which it might shock some people, but it's, the Democratic Party is hungry for a different type of candidate. I think she's really going to get a lot of support from Black voters in Tennessee. Kamala Harris is a woman of color on the ballot, on the Democratic presidential ticket. I have not heard a whole lot of, I don't know how much she's going to spur people. Vice presidential candidates typically don't, but I'm going to be interested in seeing how Black voters turn out this time. They made a huge difference in the 2008 race for Barack Obama. They supported Hillary Clinton more than they did Donald Trump, but there was not the enthusiasm there. So that's what I'll be looking at. Okay.
Chip?
Holly, I got to go back to your previous question. I feel like we're in a debate where I have to go back.
But at least you didn't talk over her. So
yeah, I didn't talk over her. I would never do that. She has tea. I'm looking forward to the tea. I don't want to get that. She talked about how the Republican Party really kind of started making a difference about 20 years ago. I think, Vice Mayor, if you can Google, I think there was a young, aggressive party chairman that the Republicans elected about 20 years ago that really started that march. I think if we can figure out who that was, I think that would answer a lot of questions.
Why don't you want to just end the show now, and I'll go Google it.
That would be me.
Yes.
But anyway, so the interesting thing about the African-American vote, so 4 years ago, Donald Trump got 8% of the African-American vote, better than Mitt Romney, 6%. The magic number is 12 to 15%. So I think I'll look at that as well as what Holly's looking at. Is we do some exit pollings, and the president's doing well with minorities. We've seen polling where he's in the 30s or 40% with Hispanic vote. If he can get 12% of the African American vote, I mean, those are going to be good numbers for him. Another thing is, if you look for states, the states that are going to matter for us: Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona. If we don't win those, it doesn't matter. And Pennsylvania is the big one that we have to have. We got to either have Pennsylvania or Michigan. I think both are tightening, but I think we also have to look at margins. If we go to bed at 12 o'clock and the president's up 1 point in one of those states, I don't think 1 point is going to last past absentee ballots. So, because I think we're going to have to really look at margins, whether it's election night or the day after. And also, there's lots of lawyers that are doing this right now full time on both sides. What are the laws in each state? When does the campaigns have to be certified? How many absentee ballots do they have to count? How are they going to get them counted? There's some counties that are just better at this than others, and there's some that are always lagging. I mean, in Tennessee, Shelby County is always the last one in the door. We always have problems there. Are we going to have a huge absentee ballot? And there's 3 House races that Holly mentioned earlier that Republican and Democrats are all interested in. There's going to be a lot of absentee ballots out there, and how long is it going to take to get through?
All right. So now we have about, we have less than 20 minutes left before we end the show. So now we're going to go into, excuse me, the prediction part of the show. So let me ask you this first, and Chip, I'll start with you. When do you think we're going to know? How long is this going to take? And I'm not talking about the legal stuff. I'm talking about just in terms of actually making a call, not, the fight that goes on, whatever, in the legal battles again. But when do you think we'll know who will be the next president of the United States?
I can't imagine it's going to go longer than a week after the election. And quite frankly, I think we're going to have a pretty good idea on election night where we are. It might 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. I guess that's actually the next day. And the reason I say that is because if the conventional wisdom is that the former Vice President Biden's doing great. Well, clearly, if he starts winning Georgia and Florida, or close in Texas or Arizona, it's going to be a short night, right? Because we can't get there without those states. Now, if we start putting those numbers on the board comfortably early in the night, I think and then we can go move to Pennsylvania, Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, which are 3 states the president won last time, one that's closing now. And even I would put in Nevada in that mix. If those are where the fights are, it's going to be a while. Okay. And so by law, by statute, these have to be certified, usually in 20 days or first week of December or wherever that is. So it's not going to be much longer than a week, but it could be a week.
Okay. Holly, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that we should have a good idea by late Wednesday morning. It is not untypical for races to be called the day after, even as far back as 1960. I think John Kennedy went to bed not knowing whether or not he had won and got up the next morning, and maybe they called it Wednesday morning. But I would say, by late morning Wednesday.
Okay. And then let me ask you both a question. I'm going to ask for your predictions. So, I know there's usually a race to call a state. And I think they're much more careful. The major news outlets are much more careful about calling it, and will be careful this time. They've got their own types of predictions or their own types of strategies about how they do it. Do y'all know how they do it? Holly, do you know how, what are they looking for? Chip, same thing. Do you have some idea of what they're looking for? Or are they, because they certainly don't want to call a thing. I think I saw it, maybe even 4 years ago, where they called the state, and then they went back and uncalled it because they weren't sure. Well,
in 2000, I believe Florida was one of those instances when that happened, when it was called for Gore and then it wasn't Gore. I don't really know what the process is for that, but I think you are correct. There is a race by media outlets to be the first to call. And there's also a saying in not just journalism, but everywhere, it's better to be right than first. Typically, I wait to see what the Associated Press says. For me, they are the outlet of record. They do not call quickly. They tend to be right rather than first. And I think everybody should be cautious this time in their race to be first.
Okay, Chip.
So they have a team of data folks, and what they're looking for is they match what's the hodgepodge of polling that they're looking at. They also do exit polling. They look at history trends, and then they see how the votes are coming in. So that's kind of the 4 buckets they look at. For instance, in Ohio, there's about 4 counties that really matter that they'll be looking at intensely on election day. Most of these firms now will have people in those areas, whether they're lawyers or staff just for them, that will be giving them real data counts as they come in. Holly's right. Nobody wants to get this one wrong. And I think it's going to be that's going to slow down the process, but I think in a very good way. But I think what makes it going to be interesting and easier is, for instance, look at your congressional races that aren't competitive in the states. And if they historically won by 10% and they're winning by 15%, that probably means that other vote is Republican and showed up for Trump. If these guys that have traditionally won by 10% are winning by 5%, then that means that the state may be different because all these new people are coming to vote against the Republicans. So I think you can look at a few races in each state, kind of look at their early vote, what happens when their voting comes in, and see where they are basing up against 2018, 2016, depending on what race. I think you can look at the Senate race here in Tennessee and see how Haggerty's doing against Marsh's general election number. If it's higher, that's going to be good. You can look at because in Rutherford County and Shelby and Knox, where Holly had mentioned we have House races, that's what I'm going to be looking at. I'm going to be looking at all the other races and kind of see where is the vote coming in as opposed to history. And if it's more Republicans, I think I'm going to have a better night than if it's less.
Chip, I'm calling you on election night.
Oh God, no. I mean, I made one correct. I told everybody we were going to win Iowa in 2008. Nobody believed me, and we won. And that's probably the last prediction I got 100% right. So,
all right. Well, you all can call each other on election night or the day after, or whatever.
Back and forth. Call me. It's worth what you pay for it, Holly. I'll be honest.
All right. So let's see. Last 10 minutes. What's going to happen nationally on who's going to win? Chip, I'll start with you. Let's talk about the national first.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think is going to happen?
I was not there. Just like about every other Republican after the first debate, I was just kind of like, ooh, that really wasn't great. And we had time to recover. Being in a pandemic where people are dying is never a good thing. I just don't, that's not great. I think the president and vice president, with what they knew and when they knew it, have done really good things. And we can debate that about another show. But whether you have 220,000 people that have died or 220 or 2, nobody's happy about that. So I think the president has been swimming upstream the last couple of weeks. We get to this last week. I'd hope the GDP number, which was at 33%, would start a Wall Street rally where he could talk about the economy that he helped create until March, and then the pandemic brought it down. Our talking points are challenging, but I will say this: it's such a divided country right now, and it's as I like to say, everybody said that just 100 times over. We know that. But I really think is the voters I've seen, when you get outside the urban areas, it's a lot of enthusiasm for the president and Vice President Pence. And I think they're going to show up in droves just like in the urban core. This is not going to be, as I like to say, it may be an ugly win, but a win's a win. I think he gets over the finish line. I mean, I think if we win Pennsylvania, I think if on my map, I'd have to go back, I think it's 274. I mean, that's not a huge victory considering that he was 305 4 years ago. So I think he gets there, and we win, and then we got to go back. I think governing becomes infinitely harder in the second term because I do think the Democrats are going to keep the House, and I think the Senate may end up being 50-50 or 51-49 either way. And I think that's just I like split government in a way because we check each other. I think that's usually a good thing. But I've answered way too long. I think we're going to win. It's going to be very close. And I think I know what Holly's going to say, but I'll let her say it.
Well,
Well,
so Holly.
I actually do. I trust Chip's data and his knowledge. Although I think that Biden will pull it out. I think it's going to be very close. I would not be shocked at all to see President Trump win again. And I know there are some folks who think it's going to be a big win for Biden. I don't think it's going to be a big win for anybody. I do think the former vice president pulls it out, but we might not have a decision. We might not have a final decision for a while. And, there were so many people on the Democratic side who were stunned when Donald Trump won a few years ago. It's no matter what the circumstances, it's very difficult to beat an incumbent. The only time that's happened was George Bush in 1992. Before that, it was Carter in 80. I would not. So I think it's going to be Biden, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if Trump pulls it out.
Let me ask you this from on the Senate stuff, on the United States Senate. What do you think? I mean, there's so many different races over there. You think? What do you think?
Susan Collins in May. Oh, Holly, was that yours?
No. Like, I'm interested to hear what you have got to say about this.
So Susan Collins today would lose. I was in North Carolina with Tom Tillis. It's amazing that race is still close with Cal Cunningham coming out with extramarital affairs. That tells you how crazy 2020 is. He comes out with a sexting affair, moved out of his house, wife kicked him out, and he's still ahead in the polls. So, it's just a crazy time we live in. North Carolina, I think that's tightened, but the Democrats ahead there. We'll win Alabama with Coach Tuberville. Arizona, believe it or not, has tightened up with McSally and Mark Kelly. That was a double-digit race 6 weeks ago, but it's really tightened up. Colorado is a real challenge for us. You got a former governor and who ran for president, Hickenlooper, that's very popular. I think the conventional wisdom he wins now. In Montana, you've got another former Democrat governor running against Senator Daines. I think Senator Daines will win that. So I think you're looking at a 51-49, maybe a 50-50 Senate, and that makes the presidential campaign even more important.
So I know Democrats are still feeling pretty confident about Arizona and Colorado. What about that? What about the Iowa race?
Yeah, I can't believe I missed that. I was just out there a couple weeks ago. I think it's a jump ball, just like everything else in Iowa. It's really close, and that we didn't even mention Georgia. What might end up happening is, let's say it's a split, and then you've got you got two Senate races going on in Georgia. You got Senator Perdue in a neck and neck race, and then you've got the special election, which the Democrat is actually ahead because there's two Republicans running, Senator Loeffler and Doug Collins. So the runoff will be between the top two. So it'll be the Democrat, who is a very charismatic pastor who actually I hear a lot of things is a good guy, against either Senator Loeffler or Doug Collins that might decide the makeup of the Senate. So anybody that have friends in Georgia, tell them to move after the election because there's going to be like $100 million worth of TV and digital. They will chase you down to make sure you vote in that special election in Georgia because that could be the whole ball of wax. I mean, literally, that could be control of the Senate.
All right, so I got two more questions. One quick one in Tennessee. You see a lot of changes in terms of. Republicans have a supermajority House and the Senate. Much change in any of that this time? Chip, I'll start with you.
Yeah, you've got what Holly said is right. I think the Democrats are showing some energy and they're organized. I think they've taken great advantage of Act Blue, which is their national fundraising, and you're seeing legislative candidates running against incumbent Republicans that maybe 6 years ago might have raised $5,000 and now they're raising $50,000. And so I think Senator Dickerson's race here in Nashville is going to be very close. I think Senator Dickerson on the Republican side is kind of that he fits that district, and he's not afraid to vote against the Republican supermajority from time to time if he thinks that's the right thing. I think that's good for Nashville to have a Republican in the legislature. He's the only one. Senator Gardenhire in Chattanooga. Again, you're seeing a theme in these urban core districts with, and on the polling would say it's the college educated women that have kind of flipped on Trump. And a lot of those live in the suburbs and the urban core. So that's where our challenge is. So I think Senator Dickerson wins. I've got a yard sign next to, no, I don't have a Shulman sign in my yard right now because you're not up, but I've got a Dickerson sign in my yard. But again, so that gives all my neighbors who they're going to vote against. And then on the House side, you've got probably 2 or 3 races in Shelby on the State House side, 1 or 2 in Rutherford, and one in Knoxville that are competitive. I think we win. I think we could win all 6. Again, presidential campaign's going to really dictate, but I wouldn't be shocked if we just won 5 out of 6.
Okay, Holly.
So it's odd how much Chip and I agree. I think the Gardenhire race could flip. That to me is very interesting. You've got Glenn Scruggs, who is a Black assistant police chief. You've got Todd Gardenhire down there, who recently made a comment about, inner city people eating fried chicken, which is a great way to turn out your opposition in the inner city. I think obviously the Dickerson Campbell race is going to be really very, very close. I don't think the Democrats get out of the super minority. I think they need 6 seats. Is that right, Chip?
Yeah, so they've got out of the 33, there's 28 Republicans. They've got 5 in the Senate.
Yeah, I don't think they get out of the super minority in the House yet either. But at this point, if they can pick off 2 or 3 or 4 seats, it's a big win. I agree with Chip there. I think the Gabby Salinas Gillespie race in Memphis is one that could flip. Jerry Green, Mark White's I think that's going to be close. I think I'll probably get in trouble for saying this with some friends, but I think White probably pulls that out. And then there's one more over there.
Patty Postle, Dwayne Thompson.
Is that going to be close?
She's really working hard. I think we're going a little uphill here on that race, but of all the candidates this cycle, as far as just shoe leather, and I think that matters, especially in the world of pandemic world. She has knocked on a lot of doors, and the reason I say that is there was a real debate on whether we should do door knocking or not.
Yeah.
We decided to, kind of knock on the door, kind of step off the patio. And what we found is there's a whole lot of people home that usually aren't home. And there's a whole lot of people that want to talk. And so we've actually, in those 3 counties, I think before it's all said and done, we're going to have knocked on about 75,000 doors in those 3 counties. And that's a big number.
Holy smokes. And then, I think Knox County is, but anyway, I don't think there's going to be a huge change. I think Democrats pick off a couple of seats. For Democrats, I think what this means is some baby steps in progress. Let's be really frank. The Democratic Party has taken some big hits and is in a rebuilding process. So if they pick up even across the board 5 percentage points, that's a big gain.
All right. So we got like 2 minutes left. You all have been wonderful. So much I so appreciate, and getting lots of nice comments in, people saying thank you for being on and being open and just discussing all this. Last question, and Chip, I'll start with you, and then Holly, you follow up. We've heard all this stuff about after the election, just the transition. This country is used to a smooth transition. We have had, we had the Gore Bush thing years ago, but people may have been mad, but smooth transition. Eventually a winner is selected and we move on, because that's how we do it in this country. Is that going to happen here?
Yeah, it will. And I know there was a lot of conversation about when you became vice mayor that there was going to be a coup and all that kind of stuff, but we had a peaceful transition. I think it went well. I think the city survived. And we'll do the same thing here. And look, I have been involved in campaigns where I got my butt kicked, and I've been involved in campaigns where you do the butt kicking. And the day after the election, you call your opponent, you dust yourself off, you go to work if you've been beat. If you win, you call and shake hands and say, gosh, I didn't like many of your ideas, but I like some of your ideas, and maybe we can work together on those. And look, I think at the end of the day, our country is much bigger and stronger than one really rough and tumble election, and I think they're all becoming that way. But I still think the vast majority of the people after the election, I've got neighbors that that can't even talk to me right now because they know I work with the Trump Pence team. But after the election, we'll go cook out and have a big time, and we'll talk about either winning or losing. So I think the answer is yes.
Good. Holly?
Well, like Chip, I've also been in some races where I got my butt kicked. We'll leave it at that. Not too many where I've been doing the kicking, but yeah, I think by and large it will be. Look, there's always going to be some outliers. I grew up as a Williamson County redneck before it was fancy. I know there's going to be some outliers, like people want to pull their guns out, and I've even got some friends who are talking about getting their own semi-automatic weapons. But honestly, like, except for a few random incidents, I think people just want this to be overdone. Chip said it earlier, move past 2020. Whoever's going to be the president, let's just get on with it.
Well, thank you. You make me feel better about things. You're both my friends. Thank you both for being on here. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do next week. We may be calling you and seeing if you want to come back on next week just to see. Hopefully the election will be over, and then we can figure out what happened.
You're going to fact check us.
But we'll everybody, if you haven't voted, go vote. Everybody be safe. Have a really good Halloween tonight.
And check out the Tennessee Lookout, because we're going to have some supreme coverage of these state and local races.
All right, there you go. Holly, Chip, thank you so much for being on here. Thanks for taking the time this morning. Thanks everybody for listening. Everybody be safe. Again, have a great Halloween, and we'll see. We'll be watching on Tuesday night. We'll see what happens. Okay.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks,
See you
everybody.
guys.
All right. Bye.
Bye.